dream, a very detailed dream about this person. And then they just messaged me and they start talking about this kind of alien extraterrestrial encounter that they had out there in the desert of California. So these were two different instances. These were two separate stories, and they were not asked from, they were not solicited by me. They just shared them. So I thought to myself a lot. One, these are two people who I happen to know. They live very ordinary lives. And I say ordinary, meaning they just, they take care of their family, they work. One person is an exterminator, what I mean? Not like Men in Black, but like, like regular kind, and then just regular jobs, just wonderful cute little family and all of that, like just beautiful stuff, right? But they don't talk about this stuff loud and publicly. Every time I've had these experiences, because they were very unique, right? And we just seem to have met at the right time, right? Our worlds seem to collide at the right time. So that's how I've heard about these. So my theory really is simple. If the population is right that somehow we have this connection to extraterrestrial life, I think that the reason why we don't hear about it as much is because the more vocal people, the people who are more, especially Black people who you're going to hear from more, typically don't live in the country. They typically don't live in remote places. And then on top of that, we don't necessarily have a trust with media. We don't have a trust with the government. And these kinds of stories are the kind of stories that we would want to keep to ourselves, right? So I think that's another factor. The reason why we don't hear about it as much is because it seems like one, fairly regular ordinary people might have these situations, but they're also afraid to share them because of that mistrust. They're afraid that somehow they say something like this out loud and bam, they're gone. They disappear, not from aliens, but from the government or something, or that they'll be shut down or quieted. And so there is that concern. I really feel that people feel that way. I can tell you, this is a real story, that one time one of my family members, this was of course back in, I guess, maybe the 50s, one of my family members said something negative about the president. And then later that in school, and it wasn't really necessarily negative, but it doesn't sound like, they were on the same page. And then later on that day, the Secret Service was at my family's door. So from that period to that period. So you can imagine if that's a history that some Black people have. So this is like a real family story. You're in school, you say something, you come home, Secret Service is at your door. Tell me how you're going to feel about that. Tell me what kind of trust you'll have in saying anything. And you have to realize the person who said it was a child. They weren't an adult. It wasn't high school. It wasn't like, it was an elementary school student says this. And then later on that day, Secret Service, very official people at the door needing to ask questions about what a child has said in school. Does that like put things, so when you have that kind of thing, it seems to me that maybe we would not be that prone to share these kinds of stories. So now, with that being said, could it be that we have less of these experiences also when it comes to living in urban areas? I want to say that's true, but I have a story for you a little later that might actually take that away. But it could be that I think that we do tend to have more of these experiences when we're out there in nature. And the more that we're out there in nature, we're less likely to then come and run to the internet and tell a story, or go and find a news outlet and tell a story. And then, like I said, there's definitely a fear of being singled out by the government and how quick that information could spread. And we don't know what that means. And then we've seen movies like Men in Black. And I don't think that makes you feel better. You're more concerned about, oh, shoot, is my mind going to be wiped? Oh, man, does this mean that I'm going to be out there doing some wild stuff? It does make you concerned about your mental health and safety, because there's also that big concern as well, that most people who end up speaking about anything that seems a bit unusual freely are often associated with also not being necessarily mentally stable or in a state of psychosis. So let's get to that part.